Welcome back, and joining us is now Mr. Siraj Chaudhry of SATS India, and we'll talk about the impact of the monsoon lull on agriculture. Mr. Chaudhry, hi, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, your sense on the monsoon itself, because there is some concern now. If you look at the sowing numbers, they're not very supportive. And while, of course, this is still early days and markets do believe that we still have time till mid-July, how concerned are you?
So I think that, we've, for the first few days of June, I think the country was quite engrossed in the election outcomes and the formation of the government, and suddenly woke up to this realization that where are the rains? And, I think it has moved, but it is obviously slower. At this point of time, I think the oppressive heat is making people miss the monsoon more than the situation on the ground being as bad or the future outlook being as bad. So my take is that I guess we just need to bear it for a little longer. And as we are hearing from the experts, this may be delayed, but it's going to show up. I guess the heat is causing more concerns, but I would wait for a few weeks to see the outcome. I think it's still early in the season to be getting panicky about monsoons not being there.
All right, we take your word on that. Mr. Chaudhry, the other thing is that as soon as the new government came, the first paper that we saw being signed was agriculture. Now, the first decision that the street is waiting for is the MSP hike. It usually happens in the first week of June, but for reasons known to us, it's going to happen perhaps in the third week of June. Now, how are you looking at the balance of MSP being hiked? Because that is something that we're getting used to now for the farmers' benefit. On the other side, the control in the final price. How do you see the government in this form now making a balance of this?
Government has from time to time made changes. MSP has, of course, been going up year after year. I mean, we've had a CAGR, if I look at for the last 20 years, of about 10% in how MSP has grown, while at the same time, the crop production has probably grown at a CAGR of about 2%, which really tells us that while MSP does play a role in setting some direction. But given the fact that there's only so much or a few crops being procured by the government, MSP is a good conversation point. It does, particularly, it is useful for paddy and wheat, but for other crops, it really is more of a direction setting. However, I think now with the government in its third term, we're just done with the elections. There is probably a need to look at farmer income beyond just MSP. I mean, we have to work towards increasing productivity. That may entail looking at the seed policy. So frankly speaking, MSP will grow. There will be, depending on the crops and directions in terms of where the current supply-demand situation is, whether it's for pulses or for corn or for, the paddy, of course. The government will make the minor tweak. Somewhere you'll have a 5% increase, somewhere a 7% or even 10%. But those are really nothing that has not happened in the past. Should we be looking at some extraordinary things happening in this announcement? I am not expecting anything very different.
Ms. Chaudhry, the other conversation around the street is about self-sufficiency, especially in pulses and edible oils. I mean, this is not the first time that we are hearing about this, but all the measures that the government has taken in this regard, and perhaps there is more that we could see. What are you anticipating?
So, I mean, for edible oils, we're talking self-sufficiency. I mean, the last time we were self-sufficient was 1992. So that's almost 30 plus years that we've been talking about it. And I think it's important that we recognize that we are very far from being self-sufficient. The goal has to be reduce our dependence on edible oils, and which to a certain extent we have achieved. We had reached almost 60-70% of dependence on imports, which has been brought down, some due to management of consumption. Second, of course, there has been an increase in domestic crops, some of them. But that's not consistent. I mean, we have good years and we have not so good years. For pulses, we've actually moved backwards. We came from a period of deficit to pretty much balancing it 3-4 years ago. But again, the weather being uncertain and pulses being a more risky crop has borne the brunt of uncertainty in the weather, leading to, again, a bigger deficit. So that is something that we need to deal with. We have attempted in the past to seek support from governments or countries outside who have started cultivating pulses to supply demand to India. I think that is a mechanism that we need to keep nurturing, because there have been times when we've been going back and forth on those arrangements. Because given our need for pulses, India would do well to have sources of pulses available outside India, given the vagaries of the weather.
Chaudhry, one final one then, and there are a lot of expectations from the government as we present a full budget in the month of July. We've seen how the rural India has voted. There is some distress. Do you see a bit of a shift now coming in from consumers, from agriculture, perhaps more towards farmer welfare?
Yes, and that's much needed because what we are seeing is that standards of living and particularly the dependence on agriculture as an occupation has to be brought down. So we need to work towards creating more rural employment, rural income generation opportunities. And so it's not just agriculture, but the whole rural landscape that may be getting a lot more focus going forward.
We will watch out for that. But as always, Mr. Chaudhry, thank you so much for joining us and giving us an exhaustive list on what to expect and what really can be done when it comes to agriculture as a sector. With that, that's all the time that we have on Commodity Champions. Thank you so much for watching.